This video is brought to you by Fanatio, who woke up on her bed while Daddy Berkuli was already busy planning for the War of Underworld. War is upon us. Sword Art Online Alicization episode 25 marks the beginning of War of Underworld sub-arc of the series. And a new core means a brand new opening, with Haruka Tomatsu, Asuna's voice actor, singing Resolution, Alice's journey begins, and so does Alicization Explained. Welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, your most reliable source of Sword Art Online information, with Sword Art Online Alicization Explained War of Underworld opening special. Episode 1 Explained will arrive hopefully tomorrow, and you should hit the subscribe and bell icons to make sure you're notified once it's up, as my opening Explained takes precedence here. But as always, timestamps to individual scenes in the opening are in the description and pinned comment for easy navigation if you're looking for the meaning of various scenes. But to give you a quick rundown, it's a bit too spoilery, so consider this your spoiler warning. It's very likely that they will have another opening for the final core, but the contents of this opening is already reaching far into the final core. And naturally, explaining the scenes will come with the side effect of actually providing context to those scenes, so if you don't want spoilers, you have to leave now. But if you're new to my Explained series, what I do here is essentially provide you all the vital information on characters, events, action, lore from the source material, light novels, things that the anime did not convey properly or just did not have the time to in the case of an episode, so you can still see the full picture, or specifically the opening specials. I pretty much go in depth with the meaning of the scenes featured. But then again, if you want to read the books for yourselves for the amazing experience, Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links are in the description, and a knowledge of Stacia awaits you there. We got the spoiler warning covered, introduction to Alicization Explained done, so let's go through the opening one by one. I absolutely love the beginning of this opening. It's basically a trip down the memory lane, every major character from the past appearing on the screen and disappearing into the void, highlighting Kirito's mental state obviously, with him having his entire Flocklight fried and not being able to recognize any of this. For more details on what happened to Kirito, you can check my video by clicking the top right, but the people disappearing from his mind is obviously Asuna, as the anime failed to depict properly at the end of episode 24 before the break, followed by Yui, Shilika, Lisbeth. Klein shows up, and in fact Egil is right next to him over there. You can see his axe, but is blocked by Lifa's body, with Shinon next to her. Kayaba / Heathcliff follows them. Yuki shows up, Eiji and the Diva Yuna show up from Ordinal Scale. I would have preferred having Nautilus, Eiji's Aincrad avatar, and Yuna, the actual person, show up here, but I guess Eiji and the idol Yuna is more marketable, but also another reason I'll mention in a second, so do keep following me as I follow the characters. Quinella, Cardinal, Alice, and eventually Eugeo show up, the entire sequence ending with the Black Swordsman Kirito fading into black as well. If you look inside Kirito's eye, you can also see the dual wielder Kirito right in there. Now, as I said, all these characters are disappearing into the void, symbolizing Kirito's mind going absolutely void. However, and it's a big however, because that is the breathing space that lets me put up another spoiler warning for something towards the end of War of Underworld. Aside from Yuna and Eiji, who had not existed when Alicization was being written, everybody here are very closely tied to the plot, to Kirito waking up and to defeat our antagonist of the arc. With that in mind, I do have a strong belief that Yuna and Eiji will be incorporated in those moments as well as part of the anime, but that's just a vague assumption. But again, going back, all of these disappearing is an overarching theme with the visual that follows the title card. Alicization Invading is the title of volume 15 of Sword Art Online light novels. It's the beginning of War of Underworld sub-arc that also spans volume 16, Alicization Exploding, volume 17, Alicization Awakening, and not the kind of awakening you may be expecting, and volume 18, Alicization Lasting. Now, the wishful fan in me says that the title card text will change in episode 7 into Alicization Exploding, but we all know how that assumption fell apart back in the first half, as A1 can't be bothered to change the text file in the opening and hit the render button again. Either way, Core 4 will certainly start with the Alicization Awakening, and I'm more or less sure they will change the text for the final book's content into Lasting, similar to how they changed Rising into Uniting back in the first half. But going back to the initial topic, after the second major tangent, all of the images disappearing into the void, highlighting Kirito's mind going blank, a single spark brighter than anything lights up its surroundings, or at least starts affecting Kirito's brain circuits to a certain extent, and that someone is Asuna herself, as the goddess of creation, Stacia. I really love Asuna's animation here. It really feels incredibly alive compared to the animation we got in the first episode, but that's an entirely different matter we're gonna talk later in the next video. But we return to the hut just outside of Rulit, where Alice and Kirito are staying because Alice's dad, the village elder Gosfoot Tsuberg, did not allow her into the town. Selka is just being a cinnamon bun here, being Alice's only friend in Rulit, but a very cool detail here is that the breakfast Alice is cooking is smoking and Alice is coughing while cooking it. I'm genuinely amazed that they added this tiny detail. It's obviously a reference that Alice in his 30s is not very skilled at cooking, but it's not entirely her fault. If you read the light novels or watched my Alicization EXPLAINED for Human Realm Arc episode 1, you know that the vessel she is possessing, Alice Tsuberg, was never skilled in food matters in the first place, so much so that whenever she gets help by others to prepare lunch for Kirito and Eugeo, the kids always knew when she had help preparing it because it would taste so much better. Meanwhile, Kirito is on his wheelchair next to the window as a blue bird arrives on the tree next to the hut. The blue bird is not a direct reference, however it means happiness and sadness at the same time, and we will see the same bird later in the opening once again, where I will elaborate on some more abstract possibilities. This is followed up by the Human Realm army as Düsselbert is training the new recruits in preparation of the war, while the green-haired cutie boy here is Renly Synthesis 27. He is one of the 2 new Integrity Knights you will meet soon who has a major self-confidence issue. He does however have a very unique divine weapon that will allow for a quite diverse combat compared to what you're used to in the series. Also, you may not have realized, but those army dudes in the opening are actually CGI. It's very well implemented CGI though, unless you go frame by frame, check their shadows and similarities with each other, etc. You don't really realize it. I'm happy with that. Then we cut to the dragon stables, because who needs horses when you have dragons? We see the twins Fizel and Linel, who are a big part of the war effort as well, and it should showcase how desperate the human army is to officially enroll the duo into their trust chambers, something they had not done before. Eldri is standing to Takiguri, Amayori's brother, but the key visual in this scene is not Eldri nor the twins. Look at the background and you will see another female Integrity Knight, a slender one with a thin line of hair behind her. It's not Fanatio, it's not Alice, so who can it be? Okay, it's stupid to ask rhetorical questions in Unexplained. That in the back is Shasta the Silent, an Integrity Knight that all the other Integrity Knights are frightened by. Because out of the 32 Integrity Knights, there were only a rare bunch that were still functioning as Eugeo was dead and the remaining Integrity Knights were in maintenance, that nobody aside from Quinella and Chudelkin knew how to properly finish the maintenance and wake them up, much like Fizel and Linel that nobody trusts, and Renly that nobody trusts. Shasta the Silent that nobody trusts was brought on board by Berkuli as well, him being the only person who really has faith in these individuals. Surprisingly, neither Shasta nor Renly has any faith in themselves to begin with, which will lead into their stories as well. They are really great characters that I am looking forward to see in the anime. Moving forward, we're in a room with Fanatio waking up naked, and before you think this is just a random fan service, let me say that it isn't. It's a very deliberate shot, and again, one of those spoilers that reach further than what this opening is supposed to cover. Look around in the room. Yes, it's Fanatio in there, but back in the wall, you can see Berkuli's time-splitting sword, and right next to Fanatio you can see Berkuli's kimono as well. This was actually teased all the way back in episode 15 when Kirito and Fanatio were fighting, how Fanatio was trying to impress someone that you hadn't met at that point, but this is where it led during the 6 months since the Battle of the Central Cathedral, and there will be more on this towards the final core. But of course, Fanatio is looking around for Berkuli, while Berkuli is busy inspecting the same mural we have seen in multiple instances, the first opening, episode 10 and more, the depiction of Underworld's creation and the banishment of God of Darkness Vecta by the goddesses Stacia, Solus and Terraria. Berkuli in his, I don't want to say infinite, but he is a goddamn observant and perceptive person. He's aware of certain realities of Underworld. So you can expect him to deduce certain meanings if he were to actually meet a god of Underworld. But he's also aware of the rising darkness emanating from the Dark Territory and turns his attention to the clocking time bomb, the location of the stress test, the eastern gate separating the Dark Territory and the Human Empire where the war will break out. And we also see the 4 different races from left to right. It's the giants, followed by the ogres with the beast faces, the porks, so orcs with pig faces, and the goblins. But from the eastern gate we return to the village of Rulit that is engulfed by flames, and we cut to the Dark Territory generals. You can check my War of Underworld trailer 2 explained for a more detailed introduction to the generals, but going one by one, right side Rengil Gila Skobo of the Merchants Guild, on the left Fuza of the Assassins Guild, behind Fuza comes Sigurosig of the Giants, and on the right top is Shibori of the Brute Flatland Goblins, and bottom Kosogi of the Tactical Mountain Goblins. Following them on the left, Furgur of the Beast-Headed Ogres, and on the right, on the right is just a random pork. That's not the leader of the Pig-Headed Orcs, and I have no clue why they did such a thing, considering Lilpilin is a major player in the fate of the war, much more than the likes of Rengil or Furgur for that matter. But behind them, on the right, we got Iskan, the 10th champion of the Pugilist Guild, aka the Punchy Boys, so to say, and on the left, DIL, the Chancellor of the Dark Mages Guild. Behind them all, the looming presence and determination of Vixrul Shasta, and let me put some opinions in, he is by far my favorite character in the entire Alicization arc. Unlike the other generals of the Dark Territory who just want to take by force, Vixur wants whatever is best for the people of the Dark Territory regardless of their class or power differences, and sees a huge opportunity in a power vacuum until that vacuum is filled by a higher power, the looming presence on top of him, Gabriel Miller, the god of darkness, Emperor Vecta himself. You see him swallowing the king as a chess piece. This is obviously not a literal scene, he's not gonna eat a bunch of chess pieces, it's a metaphorical one of course. For starters, the easiest interpretation to make is that Gabriel simply puts no value in his army, not his quote-unquote pawns that are the 50,000 troops, nor his generals that are symbolized by the king piece, not only because he sees the artificial floodlights to be inferior, but also because he has a bigger army plan to change the course of the war. Secondly, and more notably, Gabriel Miller is known as Subtilizer, the one who devours souls. The king is the piece you need to conquer to win a game of chess. For Gabriel Miller to win, he needs to have Alice, so the king here symbolizes Alice herself, and the reason it glows of course is because it's a metaphor for Alice's floodlight. And not shockingly, it's not actually Gabriel Miller eating up the king here, it's Subtilizer devouring the soul of Alice. And again, back to the floodlight and light cube aspects of things, where artificial floodlights are stored, you can see he is quote-unquote devouring in effect, as light cubes are simply destroyed by his actions. We cut back to Kikoka being chill about all of this, or at least keeping his calm, let's say, thinking it's all out of his hands once the lockdown is secured, but he is gravely mistaken and certainly will have unexpected things to worry about. But then the screen glitches and Kayaba appears on screen. Now, while the Aincrad visual in the back is mostly fan service or a glaring hint for people who can't figure out that this is Kayaba, but Kayaba himself is here not for fan service but due to his relevance to the plot. I will not say how relevant he will be because that is core 4 spoilers and his relevance is not directly depicted but rather hinted at, unlike some other scenes that are coming in a bit. All you need to know at this point is that Kayaba, as you have seen in Fairy Dance and Ordinal Scale, is still around, his virtual echo at the very least, through the publication of the seed. And Underworld is built via the seed. You can see where things are going, and this was even hinted at back in the Human Realm episode 6, as Rinko had heard the voice of Kayaba. You know, Kayaba is still around and is observing things happening on the Ocean Turtle, and you should look forward to his appearance, just not in the next 12 episodes. We see Nurse Aki checking up on Kirito and Asuna watching from the distance and running out of patience. She takes her hand off of the window, which you can see the ring from Ordinal Scale on, because I must mention it, otherwise Valgraf from SAO Wikia will be mad at me, and she decides to take matters into her own hands, returning to the main room. We see the team Dickhead, consisting of Gabriel Miller aka Subtilizer in the front, Wasago Casals on his right, also known as Po, the leader of Laughing Coffin, Critter to his left, the IT responsible of the mercenary force, and unnamed irrelevant people, the bald dude and the mustache dude. There are very minor known names from the team, but it's impossible to match them to the visual, so I won't go ahead and assume things, mainly because none of those two actually look like what I would expect from a Hans. Following Team Dickhead, we turn around the entire light cube cluster, where all light cubes are clustered together into one central data center. We see Rinko and Higa working hard, which at best is representative of volume 16 ending, so episode 12 ending, or much more likely, what they are doing during volumes 17 and 18 to counter Gabrielle's real plans, which I will not elaborate on in this video. As I said, unless it's a direct depiction of spoilers, I don't want to provide spoilers beyond this core. But when the spoilers are clearly depicted, like in the next scene with the entire character cast flying to a different location, it's a cool visual, but goddamn, that is major volume 17 spoilers right there. So again, this is a major spoiler warning for you, but if you're here despite multiple warnings prior, let's just go. Obviously, Asuna will not enter in her Alo outfit, she will be logging in with the Goddess of Creation super account known as Stacia, as you have seen at the beginning of this opening. To give you a little bit more, Leafa and Shinon won't be appearing in their Alo outfits either, and the anime has already teased their appearances so much back in the first half to begin with, even with correct colors despite the super accounts not really having color codings on their own. But yes, the rest of the cast and a whole lot more will appear in their Alo outfits or the outfits from their respective seed-based games. Remember, Underworld is built via the seed that has a character conversion feature installed by default. It's running on the same infrastructure as any other seed-based game, on a surface level at the very least, with the only difference being the Floodlight acceleration feature that requires an STL to use. But if you return the FLA back to 1, so real life speed, there is no difference at all between Underworld, Alo, Eugeo, Asuka Empire and more, and thus the world can easily be accessed via an Emosphere if a public login were to exist. And obviously this is what's happening here as a response to Gabrielle's actual plan to fight his own war. But then we reach the climax of the opening. Very similar to Yui in the Aincrad opening, we see Alice curled up, desperate and lost with no hope or direction, while Gabrielle aims to capture her. I'm really glad they depicted it this way. It just puts more emphasis on the fact that how lost Alice really feels, and that being the reason why she's desperately trying to wake Kirito up from slumber for some hope and answers, rather than a romantic reason that clickbait YouTubers may want you to think. But in the end, it is of course both Kirito and Eugeo giving Alice the push to find her own meaning in this world. On top of that, it also mirrors Alice's sentiment that you heard in the trailer, and we will see that in the second episode of course, when she says she will fight to protect the world that Kirito and Eugeo fought to save. That is her initial push towards revelation, beautifully portrayed with a literal push by the duo. And that brings us to the scene of the war. While Alice won't be an active part of the war like the opening depicts here, the other scenes are relatively accurate. Du Solbert using his conflagration bow to decimate enemies, Eldri clashing with some goblins, but I need to mention his clash with DIL of the Dark Mages Guild is a much more metaphorical one that highlights the climax of his character arc, one of the grandest moments that shapes the war's direction. We cut to Furgur, who will have a different target during the fight, as Fanatio, which is taken straight from the line novel illustrations, aiming towards the chief of the giants Sigurosig, which will lead to a major massacre in a way that you won't be expecting, and a warrior will fight for her heart to her final breath. What we get afterwards is a scene that I hope anime will have some original scenes. This scene is a flashback moment from Vixurul Shasta's perspective, a time after the passing of his mentor against the commander of the unkillable Integrity Knights Berkuli Synthesis 1. The fight portrayed in the novels is quite the short one and is more of a dialogue of mutual respect rather than a fight. I'd love to see the anime expanding on the scene by making them fight a bit longer and share their respect during the fight. Shasta is just one of those characters that I definitely want to see much more of. But we cut to a scene of massacre with Alice on top of all the bodies of the casualties, not just the dark territory mind you, but from both sides, and she is the one responsible for the most of the massacre, let's say. While there is no blood involved in the massacre, you see Alice covered in metaphorical blood, including blood on her hands, which is pretty much the most literal depiction of the term itself. War is brutal and both sides learn how brutal it is, including Alice, who had to cause this destruction to save her own people. In her mind, people who have lost a great deal due to this war flash up. Ronia and Tiza, who lost Eugeo and Kirito respectively. The Princess of the Porks can be seen, someone who has no relation to Alice at all, but a major showcase of loss for the pork leader Lilpilin. And last but not least, Night Sky Sword, but rather much more in focus, the Blue Rose Sword imbued with the soul of Eugeo, who has lost himself and his childhood friend to walk the righteous path. And of course Kirito, who lost his mind in the same righteous journey that helps Alice stand up again for what is right. The eye patch flies off, leaving a key in her hand with the petals on it representing her. As the previous trailers have stated, Alice is the key to everything, and the visual literal key has no other meaning here. With Alice having stood up, however, walking deeper into the dark territory, we cut to a reflection on Kirito's eye of a peaceful moment where Alice is tending to the Osmanthus tree, the true nature of her sword under perfect weapon control, with both Night Sky Sword and Blue Rose Sword struck to the ground in a cross, with our blue bird back standing on a Night Sky Sword's handle and carefully watching Kirito, which is the best time to interpret the blue bird visual. In Japanese culture, which I am aware of thanks to our lovely Taka from SAO Wikia, Bluebird signifies a bittersweet, happy kind of end. Not surprisingly, the theme of course fits every corner of the Alicization arc, where characters do get their happy ends enduring the biggest pains imaginable for them. It's one of those stories that causes characters to question if it was worth it in the first place, having endured all of that for their happy ideal. From a less abstract and emotional perspective, however, the bird simply symbolizes Eugeo. While his floodlight is completely erased thanks to his fusion with the Blue Rose Sword, he is technically part of the quote-unquote sword's memory that you would recognize from the Academy stories that the anime has skipped. You can check my episode 7 to 10 explained videos for more information, but an object like a sword comes with a past that dictates its powers. So, not a proper memory and consciousness that the humans or artificial floodlights have, but a certain past that is saved on the object that defines its capabilities. And now that Eugeo had fused with the Blue Rose Sword, he is part of the sword's memory as well, and you can think of it like an echo of him lingers inside the sword, watching over those he cared about. And thus, the blue bird can also be interpreted as a proxy depiction of Eugeo's echo watching over Kirito here in the reflection, as well as back in the log cabin outside of Rulit. Of course, both these are abstract interpretations of a symbol, so you're free to choose whichever one you want to go with, but I see no issue in both interpretations being intended by the animators. But that brings us to the end of this opening explain. Now, if you made it this far, I want you to let me know by commenting time for Alicization Invading down in the comments. Remember, War of Underworld explained for episode 1 will be arriving soon, along with Fate Grand Opinions for FG episode 2, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for all of that. Weekly Alicization Q&A will continue later this week as weekly War of Underworld Q&A, where I'll be answering your questions, so stay tuned for that. Links to all Sword Art Online light novels, manga and games are in the description, and you can also check out my channel merch if anything interests you there. As always though, thank you very much for watching, and a huge thanks to my patrons and channel members. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay cool.